Hey, you're listening to Blindsight. Let's go. Mental health isn't something to take lightly. It's time to fight. It's time to thrive. Let's do this.
Welcome to Blindsight. This is Bill Lundgren, your host, who has to acknowledge it being a technological dunce. However, we're on the air and we have a wonderful guest on today. Neva Fairchild is an advocate, counselor, technological advocate, you name it, she's it. And that's one of the reasons we're so glad to have her on today. But she and I are going to talk about her history and how she got to this point. So I'm real excited and welcome Neva to Blindsight.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you on, and I guess I'll start right off with the first question, which is tell me a little bit about your history so that people can see, what you've gone through and can compare to what they're trying to do.
I was born with a visual impairment, but my parents didn't realize it till I was in preschool when I would not stay on my carpet square when the teacher was reading a book and showing the pictures in the book around to the semicircle of children. I would jump up and go stick my face on the book. And she pointed out to my parents that that's not usual. That began a lifetime of being drugged to every specialist they could find to find out why I couldn't see. It was decided that it probably was retinopathy of prematurity, which in the 50s was called retrolental fibroplasia. I still can't spell it.
Yeah, I couldn't either.
And the doctors told my parents her vision is bad, but it will never change. So she's going to have what she has. In my 30s, the low vision aids that I had been using to be able to read regular print for the first time in my 20s, and I was in the middle of my master's program in rehabilitation counseling psychology, stopped working for me. I went back to the retina specialist, and he's like, well, of course your vision is deteriorating. Every retinal disease deteriorates. What are you talking about? You're going to go blind. Excuse me? What?
That was tactful.
Yeah, very. So more testing, finally an ERG with the Retina Foundation of the Southwest diagnosed me with cone rod degeneration. And decades later, the third attempt at genetic testing identified the ABCA4 gene, which is the Stargardt gene. In the meantime, when my daughter was 19, her vision was not able to be corrected to 20/20 anymore. The ophthalmologist said, gee, I think she might have the same thing you have. And sure enough, she has Stargardt's too.
Wow. Now, how is this different from RP? I have RP. That's one of the reasons I'm asking.
Okay. RP affects the peripheral cells, the rod cells in the retina, which are your night vision cells and your side vision. Okay. And so those deteriorate first. And so you end up with tunnel vision eventually. With cone rod degeneration, the cells in the center of the eye, the macula of the eye, degenerate first, which is very much like macular degeneration, which is mostly an age-related. Stargardt used to be called juvenile macular degeneration by a lot of doctors. But the difference is it doesn't stop with the macula. It goes right on out through the rest of the retina as well. So now in my late 60s, I have no light perception. I don't see anything. And when I was a kid, if I stuck my face right on a first grader book, I could read the print.
Right.
As print got smaller, I couldn't read print for about fourth grade till age 21. And I got the most wonderful pair of low vision reading glasses on the planet. that allowed me to read regular print with my good eye, my left eye.
Okay.
Lots of eye strain. I didn't care because I could read print, and I was a voracious reader then. I still am now. I just listen to my books now instead of
Sure.
look at my books.
Well, what was it like for you trying to cope with something that nobody is really explaining to you?
It was very strange as a kid. I was the only kid in any of the schools I ever went to. And because my dad was in the military, I went to 14 different schools in 12 years of education. And every time we moved to a new school district, they wanted to send me to the school for the blind because my vision was so poor, and my
Right.
parents refused. And at most of my life, I thought that was the greatest idea ever because I got a really well-rounded education. My parents
Right.
just said, figure it out. You can do it. Don't give up. And I was a mediocre student, and I got through, and I had a great high school experience. I marched in the band. I don't think in the late 60s, early 70s, there were any schools for the blind that were doing that kind of stuff. They are now,
Right.
but I wouldn't have certainly gotten it back then. And I loved it. And I was in art classes, using, my poor vision, making art. It's art, whatever. But it was really challenging because I had no accommodations except when I finally admitted that I could not read the mimeograph. Do you remember that old purple mimeograph that the tests?
Right. Yeah.
And I finally admitted I can't see this. I can't read it. And that prompted them to start reading my tests to me, which was very helpful, except when it's the teacher reading the test to you and that
Right.
they know the right answers. That's a lot of stress on you to try to do well on a test. It was very hard. But that got me through public education and the first 3 years of my college education before I got married and my husband finished his master's degree. We left college. We had a couple of kids, and 10 years later, I went back to college. And oh my goodness, there were talking computers, there were video magnifiers.
Right.
I thought I had died and gone to heaven,
Yeah. So what you're talking about is for the way you got through was passing.
Yes, barely.
Yeah, kind of
passing.
like not letting letting people know, but they don't understand. So you had to fake it for all that time, like most of us in that era had to do.
Pretty much. And I had an experience as a sophomore where all my friends were taking typing in high school.
Oh,
Okay. Manual typewriter, copybook sitting over to the left on a stand. And I get in there and I stick my face over on that book and I'm trying to follow what it says. And the teacher says, you can't do that. You have to sit up straight. Your hands have to be parallel. The back of your hands have to be parallel with the ceiling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to fail this class if you can't do that. I said, but I can't see it if I don't lean over. And she said, then you need to drop this class. And I didn't know enough to say, no, you need to figure out a way to teach me. And so I didn't learn to type until I was 30. I was halfway through my master's degree, and I just decided I am not going to write my master's thesis on a legal pad with a bold line pen. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, good.
And so I learned to type. My sister taught me in 3 lessons at my kitchen table on her little manual typewriter. We borrowed a typing book from the library, and she read out loud FFF space, DDD space, SSS space. And that's what allowed me to learn to use a talking computer at first it was a Zoom text program that gave me 8 characters across and 3 lines high in WordPerfect 5.1. That's how I wrote my master's thesis.
Wow. So it's adaptation and not giving up.
Well, pretty much. I've always been a stubborn person. My husband will attest to that. And so would my parents have. And I wanted to do things. I really don't know where that came from. My mother would have been perfectly happy with me never going off to college, staying home and living with her for the rest of her life.
Oh, no.
And I wanted no part of that, Bill. I wanted a
Sure.
life, I wanted to do things
Absolutely.
and be active and meet people, and I did.
This is often the thing we get involved in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I ran into lots of very supportive people in my college years when I went off to school as a low vision kid, knowing nothing about nothing, with living with blindness. And when I finally finished my master's degree and went to work for what was called the Texas Commission for the Blind, then it's the vocational rehabilitation agency here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I worked around so many people who were blind or had low vision that were competent with their blindness skills. And honestly, that's where I learned it, when I was actually providing the services and arranging for vocational rehabilitation teachers to work with people and assistive technology consultants to work with people. That's where I learned my blindness skills. And
I see. So in other words, it wasn't really until you were in the middle of blindness, so to speak, with
yeah,
people who were comfortable with being blind, that you got it.
yeah, those people inspired me. I saw what they were doing. I wanted to do it too. I wanted to be free of eye strain headaches
Mm-hmm.
and switch to screen reader on my computer rather than enlargement when we went from the
Right.
DOS world to the Windows world, because all
Right.
of those icons, all of those patterns and colors made no sense to me visually at all. I could make an icon the size of the whole screen and I still couldn't tell you what that icon was about. And
Right.
so I switched to screen reader support for my computer access, and all of a sudden, after, let's see, that was 1997, so I was 41 years old. All of a sudden, I had no more headaches.
Mm-hmm.
It
There you
was
go.
the best thing on the earth. And I don't know if 5 years earlier, when I'd been learning to use a computer, well, really 8 years earlier when I'd been learning to use a computer, if somebody had said to me, if you use a screen reader, your ears do all the work instead of your eyes, if I would have accepted it. I'd like to think I would have, but I don't know. It's,
Yeah.
hindsight is not necessarily 2020. And but when I did make the switch, my eye strain headaches went away, and I haven't had more than 3 headaches since 1997, and those were all sinus related.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So part of the thing is there's a certain shame that people have when they have any physical difficulty,
Mhm.
and because we're ashamed, we don't want to hang out with those people who have the same thing. But yet, that's exactly what we need to do.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember feeling that way except in my freshman year of college. Went into my English class for the first day and I sat down in the front near the middle of the classroom like I always did, so I might have a chance of seeing something on the board, although by then there
Right.
really wasn't much chance, but I was at least closer to the professor, so I didn't
Right.
have 5 or 6 people between me and them making distracting movements and noises, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I looked over to my left and there was a guy sitting there and he was writing on a tablet on his, and I mean a piece of paper on his desk, not a tablet. And I looked over at him and he had his face right down on the page, and I thought, "Oh my God, please tell me I don't look like that." Well, of course I did, because I had to put my nose on the page to see it
Right.
too.
Right.
And that's the first time in my life I ever encountered someone else who was low vision. And I just didn't have that many. And I didn't reach out. I didn't say, "Hey, I can't see either. What's your name?" I
Yeah.
was like,
Right.
"Oh God, let me hide."
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the only other
Mm-hmm.
person I knew before that was a girl who was in my high school who was totally blind. And I did find some affinity with her. We ate lunch together every day. I was fascinated by how she, moved around the building with no vision and carried her Perkins Brailler with her and everything. And we're still friends today.
Ah. Okay. So So you graduated and then you went into working for the blindness group.
Yep. I've spent 34 years in working in blindness rehabilitation. My first job stemmed from my love of vocational evaluation testing that I did as a practicum and intern student at the university where I got my master's degree. I loved administering, scoring, and analyzing vocational intellectual aptitude and academic testing. And I went on and did that before I finished my master's degree, after my classes were finished. And all I was doing was working on that blankety blank thesis, and worked for a year and 3 months at the Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind as a vocational evaluator. And I loved that job, but I left because they still allowed smoking in the building. And I
Oh, yeah.
could not deal with that because of asthma and other health issues.
Right. Yeah.
And then I spent a summer at home. I finished my thesis that spring. I spent summer at home with my 2 children who were elementary or middle school and high school. And that fall, I went to work for the state agency, spent 15 and a half years there, and then got a chance to work for the American Foundation for the Blind on a national level at the AFB Center on Vision Loss here in Dallas. That I spent the last 15 years of full-time work doing that. And now I'm part-time with my own business as an expert witness, president of the Foundation Fighting Blindness Dallas-Fort Worth chapter, president of the Braille Revival League here in Texas, which is an affiliate of the American Council of the Blind. And I volunteer on so many different levels with different organizations because I wasn't through. I'm not through giving back. I'm not through helping, and I don't know that I ever will be.
And a lot of people can be very grateful for the fact that you're doing that, because you certainly, as a role model, as well as helping to make changes with how blindness is seen by other people, by the sighted.
One of the biggest things I think we all with vision loss suffer from, and I don't use that word lightly, is the unawareness or lack of awareness of the general population. They don't understand blindness. They fear it. They can't imagine how they would do anything in their world if they couldn't see. And therefore they almost ostracize us because they don't understand.
Right.
And
Well,
when somebody loses vision later in life, they're living with that, first part of their life
right.
where they felt that way. And now all of a sudden they're a part of a new group. And that's been my focus for the last 15 plus years, is just helping older people who are losing vision later in life to learn to live well with vision loss, because it is possible. They just don't know it is, and they don't know how. And if you don't know it's possible, how can you dream about it? How can you imagine
exactly
a life with, dignity and a life with purpose? And so that's what a lot of my volunteer work is all about.
Oh, that's great. Well, I think what I experience sometimes, I know some people who are losing their vision, and I've said, let's talk sometime, and they never come back to me and say, I want to talk about my blindness.
It's hard.
And
It's hard. Those are hard conversations to have.
right.
Because if you admit
And
it, you have to face up to it. If you don't admit it, you don't have to face up to anything, but you still
that's
are living
right.
with it.
Well, yeah, they admit it, but they had to give up driving, which is the worst thing in the world. People can, feel like that's it. When I can't drive, that's the end of my life,
Yep.
which is unfortunate. But the issue is, I think as blind people, I tend to use humor.
Me too.
And for example, when somebody comes to visit me, I live alone, and I don't bother turning on the lights, obviously.
Right?
And somebody sighted say, "Oh, Bill, would you turn on the light?" And I pause and say, "Oh, you poor sighted people, you have to use electricity to get by, don't you?"
Yes. My
But
grandchildren come over and they're like, Grandma, turn on the lights. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Okay.
yeah, but part of what has to happen is we get a different attitude towards what is the reality in our lives, and we also, as I heard you say, we have to find the resources
Mm-hmm.
to help us.
Yep.
But
And
they're there.
they are
If we
there,
ju-
but they're quite well hidden if you don't know anything about anything.
Yeah. That's the big problem. You don't know what you don't know.
Right? Like
And
people don't know
so,
about radio reading services that, are so important to, the industry for sharing information with people who can no longer read the newspaper or a magazine. And maybe they're
exactly.
hooked up with Talking Books, but Talking Books doesn't do newspapers or current events or local, stuff.
So how do people begin to change that? Particularly
Well,
those who are fighting blindness, as the name of the agency goes. How do people who have blindness, what do they have to do?
well, I think the first step is they have to talk to their eye care professionals. When Dr. Jones comes in the room, hello, Mrs. Smith, how are you doing? Fine. But no, you're not doing fine because you tripped over a curb when you were on the way into a store from the parking lot and fell and hurt your knees. Didn't break anything, bruised your pride quite a bit, but that's not fine. You're not reading your mail anymore and it's piling up. That's not fine. I think we have to start talking about what we're struggling with the eye care professionals. And in the vision rehabilitation world, we have worked so hard to try to get ophthalmologists when they diagnose somebody to refer to vision rehabilitation services, which is available across the country, no matter what your age is, whether it's independent living services for older individuals who are blind. OIB is available in every state. Vocational rehabilitation is available in every state. Whether whatever your age is, you can find services, but somebody has to send you there, or you have to keep talking long enough that somebody says, "Hey, I heard about this group that does something. Let me see that. Oh yeah, that's called vocational rehabilitation." Most people think of rehabilitation as, drug recovery
Right,
rehabilitation.
right.
And then uh, the the standard of care for ophthalmology when somebody has a permanent vision loss is to refer to a low vision specialist. So not only do we need ophthalmologists to follow that standard of care that their professional association has set forth as best practice, but we need more doctors
Yeah,
specializing in low vision.
right.
And when you have to drive 6 hours to get to your nearest low vision specialist, that's kind of burdensome.
Mm-hmm.
And we need more vision rehabilitation professionals in the world. We need more rehabilitation counselors. We need more vision rehabilitation therapists or teachers, whatever they're called in your state, to teach those practical skills that we all need as we lose more and more vision to function in everyday life, to function at work, to function at school. The counselors to advise and encourage and help people dream about what their life can be.
What, unfortunately, our time is coming to an end, but I like to use this spot in the session to ask you, and you've been giving some of it, your words of wisdom to people out there who are struggling with blindness.
Blindness or low vision is not a character flaw. It is nothing to be ashamed of. It is your reality, and people around you need to understand what you're experiencing before they can be helpful. So you have to talk about it. with your family, with your friends, with people you encounter at the restaurant, at the grocery store.
Be honest.
Yes, be honest.
Mm-hmm.
There's no shame in losing vision.
With that, I really appreciate having you on. I think there's a lot of information that I hope we can tap from you at a later point. But thank you for sharing so much of your experience.
Thank you for having me, Bill.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And to you out there, keep in mind what has been said about what the next step is. If you have any questions or any comments to make about our program, remember there's a helpline. It's helpline aftersight.org, and helpline telephone is 720-721-8856. We'd love to hear from you. We've gotten comments and they've been very, very helpful. So I'm Bill Lundgren signing off, and I thank you, Neva, for being with us, and look forward to our listeners tuning in again. Thank you.